With Miller Mott College's online programs, you can choose when you study. Our online programs give you the flexibility to make education work with your schedule. Earn your degree without derailing your life. Visit us online at miller-mott.edu. That's miller-mott.edu.
Welcome to Bite Size Bios. This is meant to be a mini-sode that will accompany HDTH. Every week, I will pick a person from history and dive into their lives. Welcome back to another episode of Bite Size Bios, BSB. This is episode number 33, I believe it is. We are going to be talking about Yasuke. I think that's how you pronounce it. He was to my knowledge, the first and only black samurai to ever exist. So that's pretty interesting in itself. I'm going to find out a little bit about his life. Before we get there, since this is the mini episode accompaniment to HDTH, we've got to go back to the last week's episode, which was on the Berlin Wall. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't know much about the Berlin Wall before I did the research. I didn't realize how big of a part it played in global politics, really. I mean, you would say, oh, why wouldn't you know? I mean, I don't know. I feel like it wasn't covered. We covered it in school, but I just didn't care then. It could have been one or the other. I just feel like, there's so much when you realize, I guess that's why people major in history is there's, when you take a history class, I guess you can only fit in so much. You have to actually really want to do the work to find out all the interesting tidbits that come along with historic facts. So I said that to say, learned a lot about the Berlin Wall. Learned that basically it was the product of World War II, which I didn't know that until maybe now. I've seen a movie previously about post-World War II Germany, but I wasn't. It was no connection to the Berlin Wall whatsoever when I was watching it. This was years ago, but so I hadn't really realized that that it really goes all the way back to basically the suicide of Hitler. The Berlin Wall, it's not, kind of it's the seeds that would be laid. The fact that the Soviets got to Berlin first, the fact that they lied to the West about Hitler's body whereabouts and also whether he was even dead, lied about it for 20 years. It really just laid the groundwork of secrecy that they would just exploit to their, I guess you could say, benefit. We're gonna do an episode on the Cold War, so I'll be honest, I don't know much about the Cold War either. All this stuff was before me, you know what I mean? So I know a little bit about it, but I think you would know more about it if you lived it, and I never lived it, so I'm going back and trying to learn about it. But yeah, Berlin Wall went up in 61, ended up the final piece being put together in 75, took 14 years to be put together. 140 people died trying to cross it in the 40 years that it existed. 38, I think, is actually how long it was. No, 28. The 61, 71. Yeah, 61 to 89. Was that 28 years? Yeah, 28 years. It was actually fully up. I don't know. I don't know if there's much else. I watched a lot of stuff beforehand. And to me, the stuff that interested me the most, and the stuff that made me just continue to, dive, if you will, was just its connection to World War II. I did not know that there was such a rich connection between the Berlin Wall and World War II. And that made me go back even further behind that. It made me go back to World War I. Because I think it was all I went back to about the beginning of World War I to fully understand the scope of all this stuff. Because you can't just hop into the middle of the 20th century and think you're going to understand, why these guys did what they did. You need to know if World War I and II were movies, you would have to have seen the first one, or the second one wouldn't make any sense, I don't think, or at least a little bit to me. I don't because you have to know that Germany lost the war, and that we as Western powers didn't do that well divvying it up, which then led to some unrest and basically kind of just opened up a space for Adolf Hitler to come in there and be like, I can fix this, y'all. You know who the real problem is? History, but that's what he says. But yeah, so that was really good episode. I thought I would like to do more. Like I said, we're now on this kick of going from the 40s to the 70s. I want to say for probably the next couple months. So the Berlin Wall really started it. We're going to cover a couple more topics. We're going to cover some, some specific people and events during that time, and kind of just take a run at it. Because I think, just like I'm saying with both the world wars, is you start to talk about this stuff, but you don't want to talk about it in a vacuum because it didn't occur in a vacuum. You know what I mean? Like I said, Adolf Hitler didn't just be able to stand up in front of people and them listen to them, or them listen to him and think he's got good ideas. They had to be disenfranchised first. How were they disenfranchised? What is that journey? Let's go back. You have to know the entire thing. So I'm hoping that we can really look at some things from a very well-rounded perspective, maybe a way that hasn't been looked at. Because I feel like that happens a lot in history. You look at these places like this. We're gonna look at from even what I'm doing. I'm going from the 40s to the 70s, and there's stuff that happened in the 30s. I mean, even World War II was already happening in the 30s. So I mean, technically, I guess what we're doing is going from the mid 30s up into the 70s, and that was something that I didn't know. Even doing more research, I mean, I've learned, learned so much. But that basically, and I've heard this before, but that the World War II started in China, basically with like Japanese invasion of China, like 2 years before Hitler went into Poland, and so it really does just puts a wider scope on just the war itself. But yeah, I think that's it for the rehash of episode 75, I think it was, of HTTH, the Berlin Wall. We really have come a long way. 75 episodes deep. I mean, we're 25 away from 100. I guess less than 25 now. 100 episodes total if you add all the the bite-sized bios with the main attraction. But yeah, it's pretty wild. So yeah, like before we get to the episode, as always, HTT happen for everything at HTT happen for all the socials, and HTThappen.com for the website. I haven't been up there on the website publishing too much recently. I do need to get back to it, and I do have a podcast that I had another podcast that I've released, but I'm really not doing too much with it. I need to get more of a head on it, but it's Conquering Netflix, of course, is what I'm talking about. I've recorded a lot of episodes, but I just have not had the time to put all the extra legwork behind it, to get the website going and submit it to all the places. It's been a thing. I'm kind of hoping if I say this now, I'll kind of make myself want to start doing more, kind of put it out to people. But yeah, so yeah, HTT Happen for everything, guys. 5 stars if you love this, 2 stars if you didn't love it. Tell us why you didn't love it, because constructive criticism is always welcome. I think you guys will like today's episode. I don't think there's anything else to say. So without further ado, as we're going to do, here is the episode. Okay, so today we are going to talk about the first, and to my knowledge, the only black samurai to exist in history, in Japanese history. His name is Yasuke. I hope I'm getting that right. It's Yasuke. I mean, you could say, I could probably, try to pronounce it, and we're just going to go with Yasuke, right? So we're going to get into that. But before we get there, I thought it would maybe kind of help, because I think my first question with Yasuke is black people in Japan? Question mark? You know what I mean? So I'm just like, I'm going to run through that for a hot second, and then we're going to jump into his life. Okay, and so what we find is what is pretty, it's pretty ubiquitous across the board. If you look at almost every continent there, and almost every nation, I wouldn't say every nation, but almost every continent, the indigenous people of that continent are darker. We'll put it that way. They are brown, definitely. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that about Australia, or even like what we're getting into now in Japan. The first people, which it makes sense when we talk about humanity, started in Africa. The first people were black. So they went out and then became other races. So it makes sense that the first people who ever came to these continents were black people. So that's not how we get Yasuke, for the record. But it just kind of goes into this question of black people in Japan, question mark. So in 1923, anthropologist Roland B. Dixon wrote that this earliest population of Japan were in the main a blend of Proto-Australoid and Proto-Negroid types, and thus similar in the ancient underlying stratum of the population southward along the coast throughout Indochina and beyond to India. So they looked kind of like the people from India. Dixon pointed out that in Japan, the ancient Negrito element may still be discerned by characteristics which are at the same time exterior and osteologic. And I'll be honest, I don't know what that means. But we'll just go back to the fact that he said they were brown. There were brown people in Japan before they became Japanese looking. Like I said, that was for me, because I don't know. Like, I will find out. Like I said, that's not where he comes from. But you want to, I don't know. You wonder. I'm curious enough to think Was he born there? He wasn't. So now we'll get into the first European contact with Japan, which is how we get Yasuke. But the Nanban trade. The Nanban trade was a form of European contact that began with Portuguese explorers, missionaries, and merchants in the Sengoku period, and established long-distance overseas trade routes with Japan. So this was the first time that European contact was made. Let me get the exact year of when that happened. 1543. So it's, I mean, and this goes back to, I mean, honestly, this goes into a lot of what we were talking about these last few weeks and months, with just knowing that the Portuguese were just out here on these seas back like 500-600 years ago, man. They were doing it. Like when I wonder, and I often wonder, I really do, how Portugal still stays afloat as a main country in Europe. And I wonder, I bet they got some skeletons in their closet. You're not out here doing all this and still the same country without getting your hands dirty, and probably still having your hands dirty. So the Nanban trade, which was the first established European contact with Japan, happened around the 1540s. And not long after that, Christianity would come via the Roman Catholicism of the Portuguese, good old Portugal. And so that's pretty much, just like I said, I wanted to lay a little bit of groundwork for what we're talking about, because normally we jump into just this bio, but I feel like this bio, the guy before him, Mansa Musa, like these are people that I feel like you kind of got to lay a foundation before you can kind of, All right, so Yasuke. He was a man of African origin who served as a retainer and weapon bearer to the Japanese daimyo Oda Nobunaga, right? And what's crazy is these families actually still exist now. They still exist today. They are not samurais. We may get into that later, but it's pretty interesting because this family was real. So we know this isn't fake. This isn't a movie. He really was there. In 1579, Yasuke arrived in Japan in the service of the Italian Jesuit missionary Alessandro Baglignano, who was a visitor of missions in the Indies and India. And this guy actually, he was a big wig in like the Christian like missionary area. I don't really know what they call that, but like he was basically tasked with like kind of trying to like bring, I guess, God and Christianity to like the entire Asian area at that time. And that was his whole thing. Like this isn't about him, but he did a lot as well. But during the time that we're talking about now, he brings Yasuke to Japan, 1579. Yasuke was one of the several Africans to probably have come with Alessandro. And this was thought, but he was thought to have been the first African that Nobunaga had ever seen. He would actually get to know this guy very well, and would actually end up being around for Nobunaga's forced suicide in 1582. So he would really become ingratiated within this culture, which is, I think it's really interesting when you think about it. And I think we're going to do samurais here in a little bit, but to just think about 600 years ago, 500 years ago, an African not only can just exist in the Japanese culture, but becomes one of the most revered warriors in Japanese history. It's pretty awesome. So they think that Yasuke may be from Mozambique. They're not really sure. They really don't know what part of Africa he came from. They think that, there had been other accounts of people from Mozambique actually coming to Japan not long after that or around that time, which is what makes them think that. And we're not sure if Yasuke was a slave when he showed up. We're not sure. I mean, he definitely was in service of that Jesuit, priest, Alessandro Vagnano or whatever his name is. But we're not sure if he had been a slave or if he was a slave at that time. It's possible he was enslaved as a child and sent to India, which would make a lot of sense because, like I said, that Alessandro guy was basically sent to all of Asia to try to like bring Christianity there, so he could have easily picked up Yasuke in India after he had already been brought to India from Africa. He could have been Sudanese. Like, there's so many different things. Like, I don't know. He could have been Ethiopian. He could have been a lot of different types of African. We don't really know. Let's see. So, Yasuke was about 6'2". They say his skin was as black as charcoal. And they actually even say when Nobunaga first met him, and of course, I don't know if I think I mentioned, Nobunaga is also a very revered samurai. So, like, it's just for context. I think I did say that. But he tries to scrub him. He thinks it's like paint or ink or whatever. He tries to scrub the blackness off of him the first time they meet each other. It's an interesting turn of events. Yeah, I think it's actually it's described in the Lord Nobunaga Chronicle, I guess, which is like this guy's diary of like him meeting him. He was like said to have said, a black page came from the Christian countries. The man was described as robust, black as a bull, and of fine character. It's such an interesting way to describe somebody. Black as a bull and of fine character. So not a lot is known about like so much about his life. Like he was definitely like he was with this guy Nobunaga in a lot of different capacities. He basically fought with him for years, for a few years, because Nobunaga would die, I think, only a couple years after actually meeting him. He was mentioned in a number of different texts during that time, which is, does give credence to the fact that this man actually did exist. He was said to have been given, I think, what is they call it, in the archives of the Maeda clan. They said the black man named Yasuke was given his own residence and a short ceremonial katana by Nobunaga, and Nobunaga also assigned him the duty of weapon bearer. And they went into a bunch of battles together. One specific battle being the Battle of Tenmokuzan, and they would fight against these other different clans. Like they were really they were really chopping it up there for a minute. But like I said, in June 1582, Nobunaga was attacked and forced to commit seppuku, which is the forced suicide. And Yasuke was there because Nobunaga was actually betrayed by one of his generals. He did like a coup, some sort of mutiny, I guess you could say, and basically overthrew Nobunaga. And so Nobunaga just did the seppuku, where I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm probably not. But he stabbed himself, killed himself, and then Yasuke goes and then fights with Nobunaga's son to kind of try to keep the fight going. He also does the same thing. So both father and son commit suicide on the same day. And then basically after that, Yasuke gets escorted by the general that did the coup. His name was Akechi. He was a samurai general, I think, and he was just basically they differ on the quotes as to what actually was said. He said that because he was black. Some people say that he said because he was as black as he was or whatever, that he was an animal and therefore not Asian and shouldn't be killed. He should be taken to a Christian missionary. And then there's other people who don't use those terminologies and then just say he ended up at a Christian missionary. There is no more information about him after that, actually. So because basically he had a really close relationship with Nobunaga, and once he was gone, I think nobody else, I guess, was really rocking with him. So he just, that's the last they said. When he went back to where he had kind of come from, as far as Japanese standards. All right, Yasuke really got into it back there. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. Like I said, we talked about the fact that the Portuguese, they were kind of the catalyst in all this. These guys, there should be some Netflix shows about the Portuguese crown, man. They're hiding something. Why haven't they been taken over by some other European country? It can't all be just for Brazil. Do they even have any control over Brazil anymore? I don't even think so. It's just that they all speak that language. That's got to be something, though. I'm sure they find a way to capitalize on that. But yeah, hope you guys liked it. We will now, I think, at this point, be heading into the keeping the bite-sized bios going with the 40s to 70s kind of trajectory that the podcast is on right now. So the next few people will be figures from that. If you kind of wondering what to expect coming down the pike. But I have enjoyed doing different people besides just the same people who were born in the 20th century. You know what I mean? This has been nice to talk about some different things. So I'm definitely going to keep working these people back in. People from all different time zones. People who may not even be real. Maybe we'll do some fake people. How about that? How about some fake people? But yeah, so this has been Bite Size Bios. HTT Happen for everything. You guys know it. HTTHappen.com. At HTT Happen for the socials. I always appreciate you guys pressing play from week to week. I really do. Helps the pod grow. 5 stars if you like this. 2 stars if you didn't like this. Tell us why you didn't like it, because constructive criticism is always welcome. Appreciate you guys. Like I said, every week coming back. I don't think I have much else to say, so I think we'll see you next week with the next How Did That Happen?
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Wells Fargo presents one of the surest ways to grow your money. A Wells Fargo CD account, where you can earn a 5.00% annual percentage yield on an 11-month term with a minimum opening deposit of $5,000. Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/CD rates to open a CD account and start growing your savings with us.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.